Welcome to the Wedding Planning 101, where I'm going to show you how to plan your wedding like a pro. If you just got engaged and you're thinking, okay, now what? Or if you're already knee-deep in wedding planning and feeling completely overwhelmed, this podcast is for you. If you're ready for insider tips, actionable advice, and real talk from someone who's been behind the scenes of over 500 weddings, then let's get planning. Hey there, and welcome to episode 3. I'm Amanda Jerome, and if you've been following along from episodes 1 and 2, you've done some really important work. You've identified your priorities, you've built your budget, and you're probably feeling pretty organized and ready to tackle this thing of wedding planning. But today, we're going to go a little deeper. We're going to talk about the stuff that doesn't fit neatly into a spreadsheet. We're going to talk about the emotional side of wedding planning, the arguments you're going to have, the family dynamics you're going to navigate, the triggers that are going to come up, and how you and your partner can actually show up for each other through all of it. Think of this as your wedding planning therapy session, because here's what I've learned after over 20 years of doing this work. Wedding planning isn't just about booking vendors and picking color schemes. It's about your relationship. It's about how you communicate. It's about how you handle conflict, how you set boundaries, and how you support each other when things get hard. And things will get hard. I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm saying it so you're prepared. Because when you know what's coming, you can face it together instead of letting it pull you apart. I honestly believe this is the point of the engagement period. It's a rite of passage for you to learn how to navigate everything that marriage will put in front of you. And how you can learn to handle this stuff now may very well set the tone to a successful happily ever after. So grab your workbook. Yes, there's a section for this episode too. And let's get real about what this process is really about. Here's something I need you to understand right from the start. The engagement process is as much of a rite of passage as it is a celebration of your love. This isn't just about planning a party. This isn't about filling an Excel spreadsheet or picking out centerpieces or finding the perfect dress. Those things are part of it, for sure. But the real work, the important work, is what's happening between you and your partner during this time. You're going to face budget and money energy issues together. You're going to face family issues. Trust me on this one. And you're going to be triggered. Your partner is going to be triggered. And you need to be able to show up for each other in those moments. You need to walk the engagement path hand in hand towards your I-dos so that you can start your marriage in a really supportive and healthy way. Because here's the truth. How you handle wedding planning is how you're going to handle the rest of your life together. How you communicate about money during this process, that's how you're going to communicate about money when you're buying a house or deciding whether to have kids or planning for retirement. How you navigate family dynamics now, that's going to show up again at the holidays, at birthdays, and if you have children of your own. The engagement process isn't just to host a party. This is how you build the rest of your life together. Engagement is your training ground. So when things get stressful, and they will, I want you to remember that. I want you to zoom out and ask yourselves, are we handling this in a way that's building us up or tearing us down? Are we treating each other with the respect and compassion that we deserve and need? Or are we letting the stress turn us into people we don't want to be? Let's just call it what it is. You and your partner won't see eye to eye on all things. It doesn't matter how solid your relationship is. It doesn't matter how good you are at communicating, and it doesn't matter if you've never had a serious argument in your entire relationship up to this point. During wedding planning, you will be met with challenging moments, heated debates, and some stubbornness you didn't realize was there. Maybe it's about money. Maybe it's about family. Whose side gets more guests? Whether you're inviting that one cousin, what role your parents should have in the planning. Maybe it's about opinions. You want a DJ, they want the band. You want a big wedding, they want something intimate. You want the destination wedding, and they want to do something local. It happens to everyone. No one can tell you that they've sailed through the wedding planning process without a single argument. And if they do, they're lying to you and to themselves. So the question isn't, will we argue? The question is, what are you going to do to show up for one another throughout it all? When you're stressed about money and you snap at your partner, how are you going to repair that? When your partner's family is pushing for something you don't want and they're caught in the middle, how are you going to support them? When you're both exhausted and overwhelmed and you just want to elope and forget the whole thing, how are you going to remind each other why you're doing this? This is where you need to have some ground rules, some agreements about how you're going to handle conflict when it comes up. Maybe it's agreeing that you'll never go to bed angry. Maybe it's committing to a 10-minute break when things get heated instead of saying things you don't mean. Maybe it's having a code word that means, I'm getting overwhelmed and I need us to pause this conversation and come back to it. Whatever it is, figure it out now and talk about it. Write it down in your workbook, because when you're in the thick of it, when you're 3 months out from your wedding and everything feels like it's falling apart, you're going to need those agreements to fall back on. Okay, so let me prepare you for something that's going to happen the second people find out you're engaged. Everyone is going to have an opinion about your wedding. And I mean everyone. Your mom is going to have opinions about what you should do. Your dad is going to have opinions about what you shouldn't do. And your future in-laws are going to weigh in on what's right, what's wrong, what's proper etiquette. Your friends are going to tell you what worked for their weddings. Your coworkers are going to give you unsolicited advice. Random people at the grocery store are going to see your engagement ring, ask you questions, and then tell you what they think you should do. It is a lot, and it can be incredibly overwhelming, especially if you're someone who doesn't like conflict or tends to be a people pleaser. So here's what I need you to do. Set those energetic boundaries right now, before it gets out of control. And what does this mean? It means the two of you and your partner, need to have a very solid communication ground in your relationship. You need to be able to buffer out the noise. You need to be that united front. Because here's what's going to happen if you don't. Your mom is going to tell you one thing, and you're going to start second-guessing your decisions. Your partner's dad is going to push for something else, and suddenly your partner feels guilty. Before you know it, you're not planning your wedding anymore. You're trying to manage everyone else's expectations and preferences, and you've completely lost sight of what you actually want. Remember, at the end of the day, this is your day. It is about you, what you care about, and it's about your love that you share. Not your parents, not your in-laws, not your friends, not tradition, and not what's supposed to happen at weddings. Now, does that mean you ignore everyone and do what you want without any consideration for others? No, of course not. You can listen to input, you can consider perspectives, you can make compromises, like we talked about in episode 1. But you get to decide what input you let in and what you filter out. You get to decide what compromises you're willing to make and where your boundaries are. Here's the key. You and your partner need to be on the same page about this. You need to have each other's backs, because the people-pleasing and the guilt and the pressure, that's where so much of the stress and the fighting comes from during wedding planning. Now let's talk about something that might feel a little uncomfortable, but it's so important. Those family trauma and triggers. Look, I don't know your specific family dynamics, and maybe you come from a really healthy, supportive family and this won't be a huge issue for you. But for a lot of couples, the wedding planning process brings up old family stuff you thought was buried or healed or at least manageable, maybe stuff you didn't even know about. Perhaps it's divorced parents who still can't be in the same room together, and now you're trying to figure out who walks you down the aisle or how to structure the reception so no one is uncomfortable. Maybe it's a parent who has always been controlling and suddenly they're trying to take over your wedding planning because they're contributing financially. Maybe it's sibling rivalry that's been there since childhood, and now it's coming up around who gets to be in the wedding party or who gets more guests. Maybe it's cultural or religious expectations that you don't personally align with, but your family is pressuring you to follow. Or maybe it's something completely different, something specific to your family that I haven't even mentioned. Whatever it is, it's going to come up. Wedding planning has a way of bringing all of that to the surface. Here's what I want you to know. It's okay to feel triggered. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to grieve the fact that your family dynamics aren't what you wish they were. You don't have to pretend everything is fine when it's not. But what you do need to do is support each other through it. When your partner is dealing with their family stuff, be their safe space. Be the person who listens, who validates their feelings, and who helps them figure out what boundaries they also need to set. And they need to do the same for you. And this is what I mean when I say you need to walk this path hand in hand. You're going to face things that are hard, and you're going to need each other to get through it. That's marriage. Let's circle back to something we touched on in episode 2, money and family dynamics. Remember when we talked about parental financial contributions and how they almost always come with strings attached? This is where that becomes really important from an emotional and relational standpoint. If you're accepting money from family members, whether it's your parents, your partner's parents, a grandparent, whoever, you have to be able to set those boundaries about what's okay and what's not okay. We talked about the practical side of that in episode 2, but let's talk about the emotional side now. Because here's what happens. When someone gives you money, they often feel entitled to a say in how that money is used. And sometimes that say extends beyond just, I'd like you to invite Aunt Susan, to, I think you should have the wedding at this venue, or I don't think you should spend money on a videographer, or I think your dress is too expensive. And suddenly, what started as a generous gift feels like control. And you feel guilty because they gave you money, so shouldn't you listen to them? Shouldn't you make them happy? They're helping you after all. Here's the part that needs to be understood. Just because someone gives you money doesn't mean they get to dictate your wedding. You still get to decide what's worth it and what's not. So ask yourselves, what are you willing to accept? If your parents give you $10,000 but want to invite 20 people you don't know, is that trade-off worth it to you? If your in-laws contribute $5,000 but want you to have a religious ceremony when you're not religious, is that okay with you? There's no right or wrong answer here. The only wrong answer is not talking about it, not being honest with yourselves and each other and them about what you're comfortable with. And here's the really hard part. Sometimes the answer is going to be no. No, thank you. Sometimes you're going to have to turn down money because the strings attached are too much, because the expectations that come with it would fundamentally change your wedding into something you don't want. That's a really difficult conversation to have. It can feel like you're being ungrateful or difficult, or like you're rejecting your family's love and support. But if accepting that money means you lose control of your own wedding, if it means constant conflict and stress and resentment, then it's not actually a gift. It's a burden. You and your partner need to be aligned on this. You need to make these decisions together. And once you make a decision, you need to support each other in holding that boundary, even when it's hard, even when people are upset or disappointed. I want to bring this all back to what I said at the beginning. The engagement process is as much of a rite of passage as it is a celebration of love. Every challenging conversation that you have about money, that's preparing you for a lifetime of financial decisions you'll make together. Every moment when you have to set a boundary with your family, that's teaching you how to protect your relationship and your household as a unit. every time you navigate conflict and come out on the other side stronger, that's building the foundation of marriage that can weather hard things. This isn't just about planning a party. This is about learning how to be partners. This is about figuring out how you communicate, how you compromise, how you support each other, and how you handle stress, how you deal with the external pressure. So when things get hard, and they will, remind yourself of that big picture. Ask yourself, am I showing up as the partner I want to be? Am I treating my future spouse with the love and respect they deserve? Are we building each other up, or are we letting stress tear us down? And if you're finding that you're struggling, if you're arguing more than you're connecting, if this process is feeling more stressful than joyful, pause. Take a step back. Maybe you need to slow down the planning for a bit. Maybe you need to have some deeper conversations and go back to the Wedding Planning 101 workbook, episode 1 worksheet. Maybe you need to see a couples therapist. Or maybe you just need to go on a date night and not talk about the wedding at all. Whatever it is, prioritize your relationship, because at the end of the day, the wedding is a day. The marriage is the rest of your life. So we've talked about a lot of the emotional and psychological stuff. Now let me give you some practical tools you can actually use to show up for each other during this process. First, schedule regular check-ins that aren't about the logistics. Set aside time, maybe once a week or every other week, where you sit down and talk about how you're feeling about the planning process. Not what needs to get done, not who you need to email, not what decisions you need to make, but how are you feeling? Are you stressed? Are you excited? Are you overwhelmed and anxious? Create space for those feelings. It's also super helpful to understand what that feeling means. The same physiological reaction will happen in your body for excitement and anxiety. So sitting with that and understanding, am I anxious? Am I nervous? Am I stressed? Or am I just really excited? And this gives you an opportunity to flush that out with your partner. Second, have a pause word or a signal. When conversations get heated or one of you gets overwhelmed, have a word or signal that means we need to take a break from this conversation right now. It's not about avoiding the issue. It's about giving yourselves space to cool down so you can come back to it more calmly. Third, celebrate the small wins. Wedding planning can feel like an endless to-do list, but take time to acknowledge when things go right. When you book a vendor you love, celebrate it. When you make a decision that feels really aligned with your values, celebrate it. Don't just move on to the next thing. Pause and appreciate the progress you're making. Fourth, protect your relationship from wedding talk. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but you need to have time when you're not talking about the wedding. Go on dates where the wedding is off limits as a topic. Have evenings where you can just relax and enjoy each other's company. Remember who you are as a couple outside of being engaged or the people planning a wedding. Fifth, be each other's buffer with family. If someone in your family is being difficult or pushing boundaries, your partner should be the one to handle it, and vice versa. You deal with your family, they deal with theirs. That way, you're not putting your partner in the position of having to argue with your parents or in-laws, and you're protecting your relationship from that tension. Alrighty, here's your homework after this episode. And yes, there's a workbook section for all of this. First, sit down with your partner and have an honest conversation about how you're going to show up for each other during this process. What do you need from each other? What are your triggers? And what are your boundaries? Second, talk about the family dynamics you're anticipating. Where do you think the pressure points are going to be? How are you going to handle them together? Third, if you're accepting money from family, revisit that conversation from episode 2. Are you aligned on what you're willing to accept and what boundaries you need to set? And finally, give yourselves permission to prioritize your relationship through this process. The wedding is important, but not more important than your partnership. In the next episode, we're going to talk about building your wedding day timeline and carving out moments for connection throughout the day. Because it's one thing to plan a beautiful wedding, but if you're not intentional about actually experiencing it together, the whole day can fly by in a blur. So we'll get tactical about how to make sure you're present with each other from the moment you wake up to the moment the night ends. Until then, take care of each other, communicate, set boundaries, and remember why you're doing this in the first place. Because you love each other and you want to build a life together. I'm Amanda Jerome, and I'll see you in episode 4. Happy planning. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Wedding Planning 101. If you're ready to take the stress out of wedding planning and get organized like a pro, head to weddingplanning101.com to get your Wedding Planning 101 workbook. Inside, you'll find everything we talked about in this episode, plus templates, checklists, budget trackers, and all the tools you need to plan your wedding day with confidence so you can actually enjoy the day when it gets here. Your dream day is waiting, and it starts with planning it like a pro.